Hi, it's Dean Jackson. Welcome to the very first episode of the More Cheese, Less Whiskers podcast. I'm very excited that this is becoming a reality. This is the very first episode, and the story about how I decided to do this podcast is that one of the most popular episodes that we do on the I Love Marketing podcast with Joe Polish is the Yellow Pages Roulette episodes. And that's where every time the Yellow Pages arrives at my office, we immediately I text Joe, we get on the conference line, we randomly pick pages from the Yellow Pages, and we start brainstorming, applying the 8 profit activators to that business. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if instead of brainstorming on some random business, we were actually brainstorming and hatching evil schemes for a real business? And that was kind of the seed for doing the More Cheese, Less Whiskers episodes. And so here's the first episode. We got Jim Hacking, who's an immigration attorney. And we started out the conversation thinking that maybe we were going to go down the path of creating a new ad and a new before unit strategy to attract people who are moving to America. But we kind of took a different turn, and you'll see how we discovered what the biggest asset that Jim had in his business was and how we turned into a winning strategy to move forward. And I think this is going to be a big breakthrough for Jim. So enjoy this episode, and I look forward to doing many more of these.
Counselor Hacking, I presume.
Hi, Dean. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited. This is going to be the first of many More Cheese, Less Whiskers podcast episodes. So I'm excited.
So you're starting a new podcast?
Yeah, this is we're going to do a new series here. Joe and I are traveling a lot over the summer here, so I'm going to do some of these episodes to put in here. And this was my idea, is that the one of the most popular episodes on I Love Marketing is always the Yellow Pages Roulette episode, where we just pick randomly a page from the Yellow Pages and start brainstorming about how to apply the 8 profit activators to that business. And so I thought, it would be, how much cooler would it be if we were actually applying the 8 profit activators to somebody's actual business, And right. So that's why I had that idea. And the whole thing is, this is really, I don't have an agenda. I don't have any, I'm not worried about, that we're making this as a podcast for other people listening. We're recording right now, and it's going to be kind of just authentic. I'm here to spend the whole hour, just, being an evil scheme hatcher with you for your business.
Well, I feel really lucky because, I've gotten so much out of listening to the podcast itself and then taking your email mastery course, which was great. And, my big dream is to set aside some money so that I can come to a breakthrough in Orlando, hopefully in the winter. So this is great.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I've just gotten back from, I did Toronto and London and Amsterdam all back to back here. So I'm back in Toronto and heading to Australia in August. So it's all very exciting. But that's kind of what this is. That's what this is kind of replicating here. Is we'll have conversations just like we would have at a Breakthrough Blueprint, and focus on how we can apply the 8 profit activators to your business. So what do you think right now? What are the things that you are applying and the things that we could maybe amplify or brainstorm as an opportunity for you?
So this is so great because I do suffer from jumping from one little project to another, and I I have a guy that helps me with some of my projects, and when I found out that you and I were going to be speaking, I talked to him about it. He was really brutally honest with me about how I have a lot of different irons in the fire, and he really suggested that I try to focus. And so then I was laughing to myself because that's your, pick one target market. So
right.
So there I am. So, I'm an immigration lawyer, and we practice immigration law, and mostly that's about helping people or employers sponsor non-citizens to come or to stay in the United States. Mm-hmm. And so what I was thinking that, probably 40% of my practice involves sponsoring a spouse, either for a green card in the United States or for bringing a spouse from overseas. So that's really a big component of what we do. And I really think that's not something that I have really created a funnel for or an experience for people, like the Hotel Impossible. I haven't really done the like make a wow experience. So I really think that'd be a good one for us to focus on. And I think we could even narrow it down to, I'm in the U.S. I just got married to someone in Morocco, and I'd like to bring that woman or man to the United States based on our marriage. And then sort of that's what I thought we could focus on today.
Okay, perfect. Now, do you serve people anywhere in the country, or do you serve them locally where you are?
So one nice thing about immigration law is that it is federal. So there are some things where it doesn't make sense for someone to hire me economically because I'd have to go there for an interview. But this is really something we could do for people anywhere in the United States because we don't actually have an interview here. The non-citizen gets interviewed overseas at the embassy. And so we could handle it. But obviously most of our clients are in the Missouri and Illinois area.
Okay. And are there a lot of those, what kind of data do you have about the size of that market? How many people move a spouse into the country? And is it always after they're already married and they bring them here, or they want to get married and bring them here to get married?
So that's a great question. And I am sad to admit I don't know the exact data on it. I know that it's thousands and thousands of people.
Okay.
It's interesting that you bring up that, do I bring them as a fiance or do I bring them as a spouse? Because through this sort of strange quirk of the way things are being processed right now, fiancés are actually getting to the United States faster than spouses. So if someone weren't married yet and asked me which should I do, we would probably recommend the fiancé. It's a little bit different process, but it gets the couple together faster, and usually that's like the number one concern.
Okay, so you're reuniting couples, really. I mean, that's the part of it. So it doesn't matter whether they are married or anticipating getting married. It's the relationship that's the thing. Okay.
Yeah, and so but
I was just going to ask you, do you know, how much is that service that you provide? What would be the average sort of fee for that, just to get a sense of the scale of this here?
So generally someone's going to spend in filing fees with the different government agencies around $1,200, and then our fee is right around $2,750. So generally they're going to spend about $4,000 on the whole process.
Okay. And is that a process that you can do in high volume? Like, are you set up to do that, as a process, or is that something that requires like your individual time? I want to get a sense of how many of these you could do.
So that's a great question. We have a staff of 3 attorneys and 2 support staff. One of my paralegals is very, very good at this, and she does a lot of it. She's about to go out on maternity leave. So we have been spending the last 3 or 4 months getting all of her stuff out of her head and into written procedure. So I think we're in we have a pretty good system. Basically, we would send an intake form to the couple. They would provide us with a bunch of information. We would prepare the documents. They would sign the documents. We would send those off, and then we monitor them. So really where I get involved is in the initial consultation, talking to people about the process. I sort of oversee to make sure the submissions are correct. And then as a team, we sort of monitor the thing as it goes through the process.
Okay. Now, as a dream come true scenario for you, how many of these would you, if we were able to just deliver them with a snap of the fingers here, how many of them would you anticipate that you could accommodate or that you would love to have?
I think about 200 a year.
Okay. So 200 of these a year, and that'd be about $800,000 in total revenue if you were complete, full with that, full capacity kind of thing.
Yes, I mean it'd be 200 times, let's say 3,000. So because the rest of that's legal fees, so the filing fees.
I got you. Okay, yeah. Okay. So about 600,000, about 50,000 a month would be a nice thing. And the limitation of 200 or setting 200 as a goal here, would that be because of the logistics of it, or do you think the size of the market?
Oh no, I
could
think
you, like, in other words, if you could handle the logistics of it, could you do 2,000? You know, is there that many?
2,000 as opposed to 200?
Yeah, I always like to, whenever somebody tells me a number, I like to
10x
it just to see what if it's possible.
We would need more support. We would need more people.
Yeah, of course you would need more support. Yeah, and that's part of the thing is that I always have to, help. One of the breakthroughs that can really be useful for anybody is to think both what you can handle right now, what would be a dream come true in your current situation, but to also think about, how high is high and kind of take off those logistics goggles, I call them, that sometimes we set a number based on what we think we could handle in terms of how much work that would be. But if you get to a point where you've got the process, the experience of really smoothing entry for somebody coming into the country, to get married or as a fiance, that a lot of that is systems based. It's funny. I'm here in Toronto right now, and I am looking out the window. I'm looking south from the Four Seasons, and there's a tower, the TD building and it was the top 3 floors of this building. I met this guy who's a international lawyer, and he's got the top 3 floors of this tower, and it just reminded me seeing you. But one of the people that I met him with was a guy I was golfing with, who's one of the largest real estate attorneys here in Ontario. And he's got a complete machine for doing every aspect of a real estate transaction. So they do hundreds and hundreds of real estate transactions, all sort of, there's lots of, I's that have to be dotted and T's that have to be crossed to make all that work. And it really is probably 90% a logistics and efficiency thing than it is a lawyerly type of thing that requires like some legal strategy and thinking. Is this sort of a similar thing?
Yeah, I think it is. And, Dean, it's interesting. I used to, when I first hung out my shingle, I was a lawyer for immigrants. And I thought that I would do immigration law and I would do other legal work for immigrants, like if an immigrant got in a car accident or needed a will. And so then I narrowed to just immigration, right? And I thought that was a big step. And then I started doing better financially and we had better systems when I just started doing immigration. And now I've even been limiting the things within immigration that I do. And so I'm thinking about this book that I read called Built to Sell, where it was about this ad agency that decided to eventually do nothing but logos because they could systematize it. And
that's it. That's it. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm getting at with this, is if this is something that you could, you know how in the Breakthrough DNA book, I talk about the WeShootBottles.com, you know,
and we shoot cans.
And we shoot cans, exactly. But the whole thing is setting up the system for it. And, you know, it's really the thing that it requires, which is often sometimes a departure for professionals, I'll call them, people who have gone to school, trained to be a lawyer, trained to be a dentist or a doctor or whatever it is, that there's often this part of them that can't imagine taking themselves out of that practitioner role, you know, and instead of setting up a business that does what the requirement is. So, okay, so I think that's cool if we can look at the people who are looking to bring a spouse into the country, and then we can do as many of them, looking to set up the system to handle as many of them as you can efficiently. And then the question that I always ask to set the stage for the before unit here is, how much would you cheerfully pay for them if I could deliver them like a vending machine?
Love it. I would cheerfully pay certainly 10%. So $275, maybe $500.
Okay. So $275 up to $500, you said? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, if I had the vending machine and I could put in $500 and take out $2,750 or $3,000, I'd be happy. I'd do that all day long. Okay,
great. And that's something that, you know, I love that you've thought that through, because a lot of times people who do personal service type things, often they set their pricing based on their cost of delivering it plus a margin, you know, of their time, how much their time is worth, and don't allocate any money for finding them. You know, don't have that budgeted in there. Is there any is there price sensitivity in that market, or is it pretty standardized pricing? And is there anything? Are there people that charge more and people that charge less, or is it pretty standard pricing?
Well, it's interesting. I would say that our biggest quote-unquote competitor are people thinking that they can do it themselves. So there's a lot of that. There's also a lot of sort of fly-by-night internet immigration form companies on the web where you pay them $200 and you give them the information and it shoots out these forms for you, but there's like no issue spotting, no identifying of potential problems. It's just, we create the forms that you need to submit. So I would say financially we're on the upper end of things. I don't think we're on the low end at all.
Okay. I like to hear that too. Now, when you look at where they are right now, is there something, you know, in Profit Activator 2 here, what I'd look at is looking, how are we going to reach them? You know, are they, because they seems to me like they would be what I call invisible prospects, in that they haven't yet started the process of, and haven't registered anything yet, I guess, right? Or am I wrong? How would you, are these people sort of, if you had to find them, where would you look?
So let me just throw this out there for you, Dean, and I don't know if this is a wild card or not, but so my wife is from Egypt, and I became a Muslim 20 years ago. So unlike most immigration attorneys, I have probably 3 Spanish-speaking clients. Almost all my clients are Muslim and or Arab or from Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iraq, those kinds of areas. So where I find those people is locally at the mosques and word of mouth. But there's not anything like I remember in the email marketing you had that example. Forget what it was, but I don't really I haven't really done much particularized marketing, and certainly haven't done any for this specific area of spouse visas.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So part of those, one of the assets that you have right now, of course, would be the number of people that you've helped do this already. How many of those, how many people do you have that are, that you've helped do this?
I'd say
you've helped immigrate.
I mean, with spouse visas, I would say probably about 200. But we have. It
doesn't even matter if it's spouse visas right now, because if it's Middle Eastern or those countries, however they got in here, that's probably they're likely in their circle to have friends or know people who are looking to do this same thing.
So I'd say around 1,000.
Okay, perfect. And those are all local ones?
I'd say 80%, 90%.
Okay.
And then, so we have an email mailing list. I send out my flagship email, like you said, every Monday morning. It's sort of half about me and my family, and half about and some about the firm, and then half about immigration news. And then I have roughly 150 YouTube videos all about immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And then on our website we have about, I think, 1,000 pages of content on our website, all immigration related.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so you've got a real great footprint there, and 1,000 people that you are their de facto immigration attorneys, and that makes a big difference right there, right? Like they're gonna, that's gonna be a great asset. Now, is that community sort of referral based? Is that something that they would look to friends and family to advise them or to point them in the right direction, or are they kind of find it on their own and not really depend on the community?
So one of the first people I ever helped was a fellow named Mazin, and I helped him bring his wife here from this town in the Kurdish part of Iraq called Zakho. And my man has probably referred me between 15 and 20 families. And now when the spouses get here, I sometimes get invited to the wedding ceremony or the wedding celebration. So they're big on referral and big on, once they feel like they trust you, then they're willing to recommend you to other people.
Oh, cool. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot going on here. So let's kind of work backwards from this, because I always like to start where the asset is, rather than try and convince new people. You've got an asset of how many of the 1,000 would be, well, it doesn't really matter where they're from, because you're not just specializing specifically on, we're not narrowing it to that in particular region per se, but the fact that all of these 1,000 have immigrated and you've helped them. What do you measure what we call your return on relationship in your after unit? Are you familiar with that term?
No. I mean, I'm familiar with it of you talking about it, but it's been a while, and it's not something I do actively, no.
All right, so here's how we calculate it. And this is going to be a number that I think we're going to be able to move really pretty easily for you. So if we look at the number of people that you have in your after unit, these are people that you've helped and already know you, like you, and trust you. And then we look at the number in the last 12 months of people that you've helped that have been either repeat or referral clients within those 1,000. How much of your current business would you say falls into that category? If you were to look back at the last 12 months.
I would say at least 20%, maybe
Okay.
a little higher.
Mm-hmm. And so when we look at that 20% of your business right now that does it, the way that we calculate the return on relationship is as a percentage of the people. So if I would take that 20%, and how many transactions or how many people would that represent in a 12-month period will be the number that
So
we
last
can
year we
divide by that.
Yeah, we opened about 230 matters last year.
Okay, great. And so you're saying maybe about 45 or 50 of them are repeat and referral.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would say, okay, when I look at it, I'm saying repeat, but there's probably not, it would mostly be referral, would it?
Well, the nice thing about immigration is that there's sort of this virtuous cycle. So if you help someone bring their spouse here, then later on you help that spouse become a citizen, and then they sponsor their mom and dad, and then the mom and dad come, and then they sponsor their children.
So lots of other, yeah, exactly. Okay. And so when I look at this, part of it is that I think you've got a big opportunity here just in the after unit when we look at that, So if we look at and kind of dissect the referrals that you did get, if you were to say how they happened, can you think of the most recent referral that you got and maybe how that came about? I don't have to be the most recent, but just think, one that comes to mind of how,
It's all friends of people that I've already helped someone else bring.
Okay. And so if one of them, just give me, think of one of those scenarios, and what I'm looking for is to see how it actually, what were the mechanics? How did it happen? Did they call you and say, hey, listen, I'm somebody's cousin and you helped them immigrate and I'm looking to do the same?
It's usually them calling the office and making an appointment to see me. And then when they come in, we ask them, how did you hear about us? And then they say, oh, you helped my cousin Dilky or whoever, bring someone over.
Perfect. Yeah. And so most of the time, if you were to look at the referrals that you do get, a lot of them would probably follow that exact same pattern, right? And that's what I call a passive referral, in that they show up, they set up an appointment, and they come into your office, and then they tell you that you helped my cousin, and we'd like you to help us do the same.
Right.
And then the other one is often a what I call a reactive referral, where one of your clients might call you and say, Jim, our cousins are looking to move to the country. Here's their contact information. Could you help them get started? Or something. Does that happen as well?
It does.
Okay. And I would bet that happens probably less often than the passive referrals, just if it's following the pattern of virtually every business that I look at with referrals.
I'm nodding. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, that's primarily how they happen. But where I think we have the big opportunity is that we've got the opportunity to orchestrate some referrals here. And so when we look at it, the thing to understand is that you've already got momentum on your side, in that this issue and these people are already sort of inclined to want to take advice from somebody who's already done it and give that advice to their friends who are thinking about immigrating. So you don't have to kind of that's not an upstream battle that we have to face here. They're already inclined to do it. So that means that we can skip right to the logistics of how it happens and try and orchestrate scenarios so that it happens more. And so I look at it and I will say that referrals happen in conversation. That's how all referrals take place, right? Somebody is talking to somebody and they're talking about immigration, or they're talking about coming to America, or they're talking about whatever it is that fits in that world. Now, in order for a referral to take place, three things have to happen. They have to notice that that conversation is about immigration. They have to think about you, and then they have to introduce you into the conversation. They have to introduce the two of you so that you can help them. And so when we look at that, the way that we can kind of orchestrate that happening more is using the power of suggestion. And so we start with one of the tool that we use all the time is the world's most interesting postcard. Now, you could send anything, but the world's most interesting postcard is what we've been using as a way to make as a delivery device for the message, right? It's not, the magic of it isn't the information on the front side of the postcard, which is just interesting facts and fun things on the front. Where the magic is on the back. It's a delivery device just to give us the opportunity to write a note on a graphic that looks like a Post-it note that says, just a quick note in case you hear someone talking about blank. And then a little bit of an explanation about why that might be happening, or why this is the time of year that might be happening. And then saying, if you hear someone talking about that, give me a call or text me, and I'll get you a copy of this to give to them. And that sort of framework there, the way that we would use that in real estate is that we would say, hey, just a quick note in case you hear someone talking about buying their first home this month. If we're doing this at the beginning of the year, we'd say, New Year's is the time when people make their New Year's resolutions, and buying a home is often the biggest resolution they make. So if you hear someone talking about buying a home this year, buying their first home this year, give me a call or text me, and I'll get you a copy of our 6 Steps to Homeownership book to give them. It's got all they'll walk them through the whole process of what to consider when they're buying their first home. That little mechanism of sending a message to somebody who already knows you, likes you, and trusts you, giving them an opportunity to, like, if you break down the way that works, we're not saying if you hear someone talking about buying a home, tell them to give me a call, or tell them about me, or don't keep me a secret, or any of those kinds of things that are just depending on them to be a salesman for you. Just, we're saying, if you hear someone talking about that, give me a call or text me, and I'll give you a copy of my book to give to them. Now, that is something that really gets at the heart of why people refer in the first place. Is people refer because they want to feel good. And the way that we can help people feel good is by letting them have the glory of being the deliverer of this good thing. Not saying, not just touting how great you are, but being you're giving them a chance to feel like an insider, Now, does your book, I know you've done a 90-minute book with us. Is that one applicable to this marriage, or was it particularly for employment immigration?
That was for students who want to get their green cards.
Okay, for students. And that one was called Staying Here, wasn't it? Is that the one?
You're right. That's it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember, because I loved the cover that Glenn did for you with the pin in the map. Yeah.
Right.
So do you have something similar that would be, the mechanism that we could use to encourage the people who already know you, like you, trust you, to that we could give them to give to their friends or family or relatives who are thinking about coming?
Not right now. I've been putting together, as I decided with my friend the other day to start focusing on spouse petitions, I started putting together a white paper with content off my website to sort of organize everything, but I don't have a book or anything.
Okay. And so that would be, I think that would be a really great tool that would be an easy thing for people to refer. Easy thing that people could say, "Oh, let's get that for our cousin, or let's get that
right.
for whoever." That whenever you're communicating with them, that we've got this opportunity here. So when we look at what I would look at in calculating your return on relationship right now is that you have right now 50 transactions out of 1,000 people would be a 5% return on relationship. Does that make sense how I calculated that?
I think so, yeah.
Right. So we look at it that in the last 12 months, 50 of the 230 transactions that you did, or matters opened, is that what you call it?
Right.
That those were from repeat and referral. And I understand you're just telling me anecdotally what you recall right now, but it's a metric that is worth looking at because it's one of the ones that you have the highest yield and the lowest cost on tapping into. I'll give you an example. I just did a breakthrough blueprint in London, and one of the gentlemen who's there is a financial advisor, and he's come to 4 of the last 5 breakthrough blueprints I've done in London. And every year he takes, lots of notes, but he has one key thing that he just goes and implements, And last year, the thing that he implemented was the world's most interesting postcard and focusing on his after unit. And when we did the math, it had generated an extra 80,000 pounds in his after unit just from adding the world's most interesting postcard. And so that's pretty interesting when you start to look at the return on investment of doing things like that you could, when you look at that measurement, there's something that happens when you're kind of presencing that thought all of the time. Even though we say something specific every month, like the idea is to think through what are the high probability conversations that your clients right now are going to be involved in, that if you could plant a chip in their ear and monitor their conversations and you were alerted to certain trigger words, what would be the conversations that would be valuable to you, and what would be the context of those conversations? Like I mentioned in real estate, it might be somebody buying their first home, or somebody moving out of town, or buying an investment property, or moving out to the country. Those are the kind of things that would be, overtly related to it. And what would be kind of similar conversations that people might have in your situation?
So I think that one is, the interesting thing is if you're going to sponsor your spouse, you have to go overseas and get married. So, there's time away from work. There's time where you're probably preparing for your trip, probably time when you come back from your trip where you're telling the people around you, hey, I'm going back to either meet my wife or husband and get married, or to go and actually get married.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one. I think another one would be, like you said, people who who have arrived. Then they oftentimes they get together with their ethnic group and celebrate that person being here.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great too. Yeah, and then everybody's around there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, yeah, when you start thinking about when you start to make a list of those conversations, and this is a great thing to do, in a 50-minute focus finder, just 50 minutes at a blank sheet of paper, and just start thinking through what are all the conversations that I imagine that my clients are having right now, that if I could listen in on them, would be an opportunity for them to do something, to introduce me to those people so that we can help them. And so when you start thinking about how to kind of fill in those blanks, the sort of rhythm of it is just a quick note in case you hear someone talking about this, and here's why that might be something that would come up right now. And if you do hear someone talking about that, give me a call or text me, and I'll get you a copy of this to give to them. And that just connects all those steps, where we're connecting the dots, because so often where it falls short is right now 50 people are turning into new clients for you, but there's probably 250 people who had a conversation about you or had a conversation that could have helped you,
right.
that you didn't you didn't get that client. And so part of that is just presencing it in their mind. And it's not always, this is what we've found now, we've been doing that for about 6 years now. And the thing that it does is it's not ever the overt thing that happens. It's not, hey, if you hear someone talking about their first house and somebody gets your postcard and says, hey, I got your postcard and I heard someone talking about buying their first house. Can you send me the book so I can give them a copy of it? That is not exactly how it happens. But what it does is that it increases the volume and the times that people actually come to you, because you're triggering something in their minds that when they hear even an adjacent conversation to that, they are thinking about you and are much more likely to introduce you into the conversation. Because if I say to you, hey, Jim, if you see a pink elephant, give me a call or text me, because I've got some great stuff for pink elephants right now. If you leave your office 3 weeks from now and you pull out of the driveway of the office and you see a blue elephant, that's still going to trigger that thought of me, because it was so close and so unusual. Same thing if you saw a pink giraffe, even though it wasn't an elephant, it would trigger that adjacency to it, So that's really the value that we have, is to get people talking more about you and noticing the different types of conversations that they're likely to have.
Makes a lot of sense. It's like planting a seed.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's planting that referral seed. And so two things that, just to kind of get us to where we are right now, is that I see that as the, that after unit as a low-hanging fruit for you right now, in that you're, you've got that kind of, you've already got that kind of relationship with people. And now it's just a matter of, if we can orchestrate this, we can take that number. It would be great to take that number from 50 to 200, and get a 20% annual yield on your relationship portfolio. And I think that's completely doable. And, it's just going to be a matter of figuring out how to keep that conversation going. You mentioned something at the beginning of the call about the right now. You were saying fiance visas it's easier to get somebody as a fiance than a spouse. That's insider knowledge that you have, that somebody might be they might be thinking the other way. They might be thinking, oh, I'm going to go back and get married and then be able to bring them over here. But if they knew that it would be easier to bring them over and then get married here, that would be a valuable piece of information that any one of your clients, any one of the 1,000 people that you've helped right now would be happy to have.
Yeah, that's a sad conversation when the person comes back all excited about being married, and I was like, oh, you should have come to see me beforehand, because
right.
I could have gotten them here a lot quicker.
Yes. So I think that might be, that would be the kind of thing where you're saying, just a quick note in case you hear someone talking about getting married before and bringing their spouse into the country. There's a lot of misconception about that. And right now it turns out that it's actually faster or going smoother, or if there's any reason that you can say, that gives some validity to that. And then saying, if you hear someone talking about that, give me a call or text me, and I'll get you a copy of the new regulations or the new whatever, or my book on bringing. We'd have to come up with a great title for your book that's, faster than just coming off the top of our tongue with a title.
Right.
But I always laugh because people think, sometimes the titles just float off, but if they knew how much work goes into coming up with just the right title,
Right.
So we're just going to say the awesome title of your book right now, and leave that as a placeholder for the actual awesome title of your book. That would stimulate a lot of those types of referrals if those conversations are happening right now.
Yeah.
So that, and then if you think about maybe the other conversations that might be high probability there, and presencing those, I think so. The way that we look at it is like you've got 1,000 people who you're sort of the incumbent, and you kind of communicate with people pretty regularly. But how often in your after unit would you communicate with those people, like with the people?
There's nothing specific targeting people that I've done business with in the past. They're not treated right now any differently than people who raised their hand and just asked about us at some point.
Okay, so there we go. So now you've got to elevate that to their advocates, right? They're in the family. Now you're part of the family because you have facilitated them being part of the American family, And I think that's a big piece. I mean, you're a very significant person in the history of that family, especially if they're the first ones coming to America, and you're the one that you're probably the most intimate relationship that they had outside of their friends or relatives who were encouraging them to come. You're probably the first contact, the first person that they have the most interaction with, and it's very highly emotional, even not sort of demonstrably so maybe, but it's very significant. in that family history. And I think if you really revere that and really take that seriously, that there's going to be a number of other needs that they have, just like what you're saying here, in terms of the amount of help that you could be to one family and their extended family and friends. That's a really serious opportunity, for everybody.
You're right.
So you got to feel good about making dreams come true, right? I mean, you're changing family histories. There's going to be families that come over here, and then their kids are going to be the first kids born in America to that family, and the rest of the families coming over here, and you're really part of that extended family. And I think embracing that and treating it like that would really be a great thing.
That's great, Dean.
And so that, to I think philosophically, that sort of approach of embracing these 1,000 people and knowing that they're the gateway to the rest of their family, I think that's really where I would start, as opposed to looking to find new people. And if our budget is $275 to $500 per person, if we were able to push the vending machine button for them, I look at it that the way I would look at those metrics is that if I were to set a budget and say, we've got these 1,000 people, and maybe you start with, I don't know what your financial situation is or whatever, but maybe you start with 250 of them or 500 of them, or even if it was all 1,000 of them, if you had a budget of, say, $1 per month per person, for the year, that I just know that if you spent $1,000 a month spending something valuable, like that kind of conversation starting piece to the people who you're the de facto immigration family attorney, that those conversations are really likely to be happening,
I'd be happy to do that. I mean, spending $1,000 a month, if I got one case out of it a month, I'm making money.
Well, absolutely. And I think that, making that as the baseline here, if you look at that's the baseline, that everybody's going to get that kind of communication. And then there are probably, of those 1,000, there are probably a top 150 that you would recognize by name and have a conversation with them. You probably have a closer relationship with those people than some of the 1,000, right? So if you were to kind of really look at the top 100 or top 150 of them and layer on top of the, kind of the every month campaign with those people, some specific opportunities to pay attention and notice what's going on that might affect them preemptively. So by that, I mean, how I say that referrals happen, when three things line up. They have to notice that the conversation's about immigration, they have to think about you, and then they have to introduce you into the conversation. That you can do that same thing in reverse, right? By being aware, paying attention, and noticing what's going on. So if something is changing where, just like you said, you kind of noticed that it's that fiance visas are coming faster than marriage visas. That's some insider knowledge. If you know that might fit a specific person in your family there, and I call that your family, your 1,000 people there, or your top 150, especially the ones that you know more about, to reach out to them individually. These are the people that you're going to really treat like family in a way. And by that, I mean recognizing their birthday, if that's appropriate, recognizing, just reaching out to them more often. The ones that you feel comfortable and have that kind of a relationship with, And I would start with the 50 that were attributed to your after unit this year. The last 12 months, those 50, the people who the people who referred them and the people who came because of that referral would probably get you up to 100 people right there, right? Both the people who were referred and the ones who did the referring. You've already got a pretty high probability group that's demonstrated that they appreciate referrals because they accepted the referral from their friend or their family member. And, you appreciating that and showing people makes a big difference,
Right. So you're really talking about digging deep into my list and really parsing out the sort of rock star members who really like to refer us and
I'm saying,
paying
why
more
not?
attention.
Yeah, I'm saying let's do that first and work on your process and your dream come true experience for it, right? Because now, it's going to be less expensive for you to do it that way. Because right now you got those referrals, but you really don't have an attribution for that money. So you got those for free right now.
Right.
Right. And the way it works out, is that a pretty typical year? Right. And is that a pretty typical scenario that percentage of your business comes from referrals?
It is now, yeah.
Okay, great. So you're already that's why I'm saying it's like such a high, high probability, high yield scenario to focus on your after unit. And I'm not saying to do that forever.
Right.
But I'm saying that in the world where we've got limited time and resources to apply things, to actually do them, that's a very valuable thing to start with. Let's start with what you've got, something that's already working, and let's orchestrate it. Let's try and double or triple that number. And see what's possible. Because if you were to chart out over the last 12 months just the frequency of how often these referrals happen, kind of thing, is it pretty evenly spread out over the course of the year? Like you can just count on every month 3 or 4 people are going to walk through your door that you just didn't know they were coming, and here they are.
Yeah, I'd say probably closer to 3 or 4 a week.
Perfect. Okay, so that's really, there's a great, that's the great opportunity there. And that way, when you shore up your after unit, you start with this lifetime relationship. That's what we're talking about in the after unit, right? Profit Activator 7 and 8, nurture lifetime relationships and orchestrate referrals. And it always reminds me when I took piano lessons as a child, and my piano teacher would always have me start learning a song with the last bar. So I'd learn the last line, and then I would move up and learn the last 2 lines, and then back up, so that by the time I had learned the first line of the song, I'd already mastered the end of it. So no matter what, it's always going to I'm going to finish strong, right? I'm going to end really well. And I think that's a good way to think about your your business as well, is to think like, where I'm going to maximize the relationships that we have. And that really makes then the anything that you're spending in the before unit to acquire new people is a multiplier, right? Because you know that the lifetime value of that one person is now, you can count on, instead of a 5% return on relationship in your after unit. And I understand that that's not a number that you measure, right? I understand that's kind of a new thought to really put a metric to it. But when we look at it, that if instead of your after unit having a 5% return on relationship, we can get it to where you get a 20% return on relationship, that makes every new person that we add in worth that much more.
It's brilliant.
That makes sense?
And yeah, and it's so funny because we spend so much time just thinking about new clients.
Yeah. But it's a lot like, another analogy I use for that is if we're playing golf and we're trying to improve your golf score, the best way to lower your score is to get better at 5-foot putts, right? But everybody wants to go out and get a new driver and hit it 20 yards further off the tee.
Right.
That's the equivalent. That's the golf equivalent of going to get a new ad,
So what should I do?
So I think that's I think having this, that focus on your after unit, I think you should look at those, look at sending something like the world's most interesting postcard to your top 1,000 there, and especially even your top 150, with those sort of conversational notes on the back to orchestrate the referrals.
Okay.
Like you talk about, that could be the first one. Just a quick note in case you hear someone talking about the going back to getting married to bring their spouse into the country. There's I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but however you say, there's what we're finding right now is that fiance visas are actually getting faster processing and favorable treatment to spouse visas, and it's a faster, easier process. So if you hear someone talking about thinking that they need to get married in order to bring their spouse over here, give me a call or text me, and I'll get you a copy of my report or my the guidelines or the book, whatever, something that makes it clear that this is something that they can get to give to their friend or family member. That's going to be one thing. And then if there's something else, another conversation that would be a high probability conversation, just looking for each month to kind of presence that to let people know.
Awesome.
And I think it's exciting to start looking now, like to even measure over the next 6 months the impact of really focusing on, looking at those relationships. And when you've got that kind of a focus, what it's going to encourage you to do is to build out your knowledge base about each of the people. We talk about building a referral profile for each of your clients, that you start to think right from the very beginning, what are they likely to do next? Who are they likely to be in conversation with? Do they have other family that could be, you're just, as part of your intake process, gathering information that is going to be useful and helpful to them further down the road too.
For the after unit.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And I'd start that with the top 150, the ones that now, the ones that a little more about, and kind of
Right.
think through those scenarios of if they were to refer somebody, who would it likely be?
Thinking like a chess master.
That's exactly right. Well, that was fun.
That was awesome, Dean.
I think I'm going to enjoy doing these kind of podcasts. I forgot we were doing a podcast for a minute there.
Thanks so much. So
it's just fun to hatch evil schemes.
it was awesome. I got a lot out of it. I really appreciate it.
And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed that first episode of the podcast. I really enjoyed doing it. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of these. If you want to keep the conversation going, go to morecheeselesswhiskers.com. You can download a copy of the More Cheese, Less Whiskers book, and you'll get notified every time we do a new episode. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, just click on the link we've cleverly labeled Be a Guest, and maybe we can hatch some evil schemes for your business. That's it for this week. I look forward to many more episodes of More Cheese, Less Whiskers.